So here we are, Dixon, Illinois, with the Let Freedom Ring, One Nation Under God series. That's right, with liberty and justice for all. So here we are. This is Fort Dixon right over here. That's where President Abraham Lincoln, before he was President of the United States of America, this is where he fought in the Black Hawk War. This is his early days before he did much of anything. This was, in terms of politics, this is where he was captain of militia. There's a big statue of Abraham Lincoln here. And keep in mind here that Abraham Lincoln and President Grant, they knew each other. I believe President Grant there served in the Civil War under Lincoln and when he was a general, and then President Grant later became the President of the United States himself, and even became somebody that spoke publicly about statesmanship around the world. And just across the river here, I'm pointing across the river, you can see a statue of President Ronald Reagan, because President Ronald Reagan, his boyhood home here is in Dixon, Illinois, and President Reagan there, you know, he's the one that brought into the Soviet Union. You see in the distance there a statue of Reagan on a horse. That's a statue of Reagan on a horse there with the U.S. flag just right across the river. And I'll tell you what, it's that close to Abraham Lincoln's statue here. In fact, the boyhood home of Ronald Reagan is about a mile or so away from here. I could actually drive by it, but I'd rather not today. But here, you know, you see an old fort right by the waterway. Ideal strategic place to basically have a nice stand against Native American Indians. So needless to say, this is some important stuff. Now, some people say that Abraham Lincoln, that there was no real reason to believe that he was Christian. But I will tell you this, Abraham Lincoln gave a speech one time, and in his speech he basically said a house divided against itself cannot stand. He basically said that, you know, the nation can't be half slave and half free, that you know, it has to be all of one thing or the other. And so that was a very important speech prior to him becoming President of the United States. And that whole idea, a house divided against itself cannot stand, that's a reference there to Gospels. It's a quote Jesus spoke. Jesus spoke those words, and Lincoln was basically quoting and applying it. So, you know, there's no reason to think that Abraham Lincoln was somehow totally unchurched to the point of not knowing the words of Christ. That would not be sensible to think. So, you know, I will tell you that some of this is a little bit of mystery. Some people have claimed more recently that Lincoln had some letters where he communicated some things that would claim that would seem to indicate that he certainly was a Christian, but I'm not going to go into that. So that's not the purpose of this video. But you know, the purpose here, you know, we see in Dixon with Lincoln and with Reagan, you know, Reagan, you know, saying, you know, Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall or tear down this wall. And that whole idea of putting an end to the Soviet Union and Lincoln freeing the slaves. This is all Illinois history. These people came out of Illinois, and that whole idea of opposition to the totalitarian state, and opposition to the idea that government should basically tell you whether you can be, a slave, or whether you can be free, or this whole idea of opposition to these sorts of things. I mean, the government deciding everything in your whole life. I mean, this is something that here in Dixon, I mean, you see that, and here in Illinois, you see that people were that are top leaders in the nation have been very, very opposed to totalitarian government. And I know that Archbishop Sheen, he basically was here in Illinois, and not far away from Lincoln, and where Lincoln once was, and not too far away from where Reagan once was, just a matter of maybe an hour's drive. And Sheen there, he was very, very notable for speaking against the idea of totalitarian government. And so, this is important for our history and who we are, that we don't stand for that kind of stuff. We just don't. And it's important for us as Christians and who we are as Christians, that we don't tolerate that kind of thing. And in fact, Illinois is considered to be the land of Lincoln. He was very critical here for leading the Civil War and freeing the slaves. That's a nice statue of Lincoln, and I'll tell you, this is nice to know that there's a Christian heritage too, and freedom, and basically setting the captive free. This is one of the missions that Jesus had in coming to the earth. Freedom from sin is the central message there, and the idea that we can get out of slavery to sin through Christ being born, died, and risen from the dead. I mean, and I'll tell you what's nice about this special Christmas documentary here is you're going to see the actual house of President Grant. You're going to see some of this stuff. You'll be able to get an appreciation for what it's like to actually walk up to the president's home and go inside. And right now we're walking right up to where Abraham Lincoln stepped foot, and I can't get inside the fort over there unless I were to make some phone calls or something. But I'm going to tell you what, it's nice to be able to go to some of these places. And back then, people went up to the president's house and they knocked on the door, perhaps, and he invited them in, and you could be just about anybody, and that was the case. I mean, you didn't have to be somebody special most of the time, depending upon the president. So this is just a few days before Christmas here, 2021, and we're going to be looking at President Grant, his house. I'm right here in Galena, Illinois, and we're going to be looking at his house because he is actually an interesting fellow. He was baptized right before he died, and he served under President Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War and became President of the United States himself. Here in Galena, Illinois, this is his home. This is where he was from. This is where his house is. And so, you know, we're going to be walking up to his house and seeing what it would be like to enter the house of the President of the United States of America. So here it is. This is the Ulysses S. Grant parking lot that we're in. I'm just walking it down through the parking lot, and you can see there's a rather old structure ahead that you know, I can see. One of the things to keep in mind here on the subject of Ulysses S. Grant is when we look at the fact that all authority on heaven and on earth comes from God. There's no authority except that which comes from God. You know, we see that this is a true statement, and the fact that he was baptized just prior to his death, it means that he really went through a tremendous journey there in his life, if you want to call it his life, that brought him to the point of his death and baptism. Now, this being Christmas, it's important to note here that Jesus Christ was born. Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. He was born in a manger. This is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He was born in a manger. And you know, this is basically the most humble place to be born, as it were. You know, he was not born in a giant palace. You know, we're talking about somebody that even the President of the United States in his death realized the value of in being baptized. This is somebody that for thousands of years, you know, like kings and people of all sort have basically put their authority under Christ. And you know, Christ is over all powers and authorities. And so, you know, this is an important topic to consider. It's an important topic to discuss. It's important to have one nation under God. You know, as the Pledge of Allegiance says, I know that, you know, when I look at a nice place like this, a nice place that the President of the United States, you know, in some of his later years, not his very late years, but after the war, came to, this is his house. Do you know, I'm going to walk into that house. There's even a sign here that says home of the 18th President of the United States. That's what that sign says. I'll tell you what, he was poor after the war. back then, presidents, after they were presidents, they didn't have much. I think this might have even been before Social Security. And so here we are walking along here. We're seeing President Grant in his house. And this is one of those kings that Christ is King of Kings of and Lord of Lords of. Not that we have a king, but closest to it. I'm going to look here. I'm going to look around at the president's house. And you can just imagine President Grant, you know, after the Civil War, standing right here on this very porch, you know. I'll tell you what, you know, President Grant's baptized. So here we are, President Grant's house here. We're looking at the entryway. This is you know, pretty amazing here. We're seeing some very old paintings here, and so far this is awesome. Okay, so here I am inside the Grant house, and this is a lot of original stuff here. Look, if you see in the background here, that's a Bible. See, they, believe it or not, I mean, you know, like when you're the President of the United States, I mean, you have to count on somebody. And that somebody's God. And so, you know, here in the very background, we see a giant Bible. Now, he was baptized prior to his passing. So it's not like, you know, he was a baptized Christian all of his life. But yet, you know, we see a Bible in this place. I mean, you know, today, you know, you go to school, a lot of times they're kicking the Bible out of there. But right here, Grant's house, there's a giant Bible. Can you believe that? I mean, you know, these people believed. Now, in this house, I'm told, I mean, like, after the Grant family lived here, like, there hasn't been, like, a private owner. It's like, it's gone to the, you know, government, I mean, pretty much. And you know, they've been, like, kind of keeping it up. That's my understanding of it. I don't know. I'm just having a tour right now, so I'm just kind of looking, and I'm going to show you guys some of this here. So, you know, there's some nice Grant house. Yep. Very nice library in here. All kinds of good stuff. Yep. So, you know, this, you just imagine President Grant, like, sitting right in that table over there, you know, maybe reading the Bible. I mean, can you believe it? Oh, look at that. Look at that. We got a giant Christmas tree here. Yeah. See, I'll tell you what, you go to public schools today, and, you know, it's just almost a miracle to even still have Christmas there. I mean, you know, and here's President Grant, you know, and a lot of this is this original. I mean, you know, can you believe it? I mean, you know, it's just so amazing. You know, Illinois has a lot of great people. You know, even President Ronald Reagan, you know, he had a start there in Dixon, Illinois. President Abraham Lincoln, you know, he served as captain of militia there in Black Hawk War in Dixon, Illinois. You know what? Lincoln and Reagan, if they weren't in different times, they probably would have met each other there in Dixon. You know, where they both had their starts there. And you know, this is not too far away from Dixon. I mean, you know, this is kind of the center, as it were, or one of the main centers of our democracy. I mean, you know, you look at the fact that Grant there, he served in the Civil War under Lincoln and freed the slaves, and then you look at the fact that Reagan there, he basically put down the Soviet Union. He said, Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall, and freed the slaves. So, I mean, you know, this is all about freedom and democracy. I mean, and you know, I hate to use the term democracy these days, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of freedom here. And Christ came to set the captive free. I mean, this is some important stuff. So here we are, walking down the hall. This is where President Grant himself walked. Oh my God! President Grant would have been eating in this very room, possibly. Likely so. They even have a little looks like, it's not a little, but giant turkey. Yeah. So, you know, he's sitting there eating his turkey, maybe contemplating who Jesus is, you know. And see lots of great things here. So here it is. This is the tub, the bathtub that President of the United States here actually, he probably would have been, you know, bathing in that very tub there. Going in there, had a bath, and you can see this is the kitchen here. I was just kind of showing you what the restroom was like, and I'll tell you what, this is such a nice place. You see a giant stove here. You know, you see all the sorts of nice things that you normally see in Christmas movies. Yeah, so here it is. Grant was fond of cucumbers, corn, pork, beans, all kinds of good things. Tells you what he liked to eat. So here it is. We all know that Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I'll tell you what, you know, even though President Grant, he wasn't baptized until later in his life, I mean, you know, prior to his passing there, you know, he had some nice things, you know, because God obviously provided for him. You know, this is their pantry. You know, they had some storage, some food storage likely for some time, you know, get through some of those hard winters. And got some bread there, kind of show you what bread would have been like back in that time. And I'll tell you what, this is not a bad place. You know, they even have a little oven there. You know, this is you know, just such a good place. And President Grant, you know, looking down, you know, from heaven, being so glad he was baptized. I mean, you know, you could just imagine that. I mean, certainly so. I mean, and you know, why not? Why not? You know, and I'll tell you what. Like I say, this is a very great place. I'm going to show you here what the stairs look like. I imagine the tour doesn't include the stairs, but I'm going to show you kind of what the stairs look like. Sometimes, you know, stairs, they can be built where they're kind of uneven. So when you go up the stairs, sometimes you trip if they're real old stairs, because there's a formula that they have to be built by. But so anyway, that gives you an idea what his home is like. Okay, so this is the back of the Grant house here. You know, we're seeing Galena. You know, we're seeing, I think this might have been like some kind of, you know, big, maybe a place for horses at some time. He may have had some horses, and I'll tell you what, you know, you get an appreciation for what this place was like here, and you know, it can be a nice place, and you know, giant barrel here. You know, they may have had some old barrels back then, and lots of nice overhangs on the roof there because they didn't have air conditioning. So, you know, this is nice. This is nice. Christmas is almost upon us in terms of Christmas Day. You know, we all know about 12 days of Christmas, but Christmas Day is almost upon us. And we're looking at the very house that President Grant, you know, lived in. This is where he had shelter. You know, is this house? I'm walking around it here even, and you can see it's a nice place. Believe it or not, it's not a big house. You know, I actually looked at buying a church larger than that at one time. I actually had a tour of it, and I'll tell you what, you know, it's nice. It's nice when you can have a nice place to live, be the President of the United States. It looks like these are restrooms right here, so we got some kind of exhibit here going on. That gives you an idea what this place is like. So here we are, just leaving the restroom of President Grant's house. And I'll tell you what, one of the reasons for doing this documentary here is so that you can sort of have some ideas about your life. You know, you're going to school, let's say, you know, maybe a young person, and you want to have, you know, a good life, maybe not a bad one. I mean, we all tend to want that. Christ came so that we may have life and have life more abundantly. And for President Grant, that was certainly the case. It might seem as though Grant had a really nice life, was president and everything, but it's only after he was baptized and passed on that you could say that he really started living. I mean, and so, you know, really, this is some important stuff for you and your future, and you know, it's some important stuff for basically considering how you're going to structure your whole life. And believe it or not, when you're young, you might think that it doesn't matter how things are going to go in your life. You're just going to sort of wait for something good to happen tomorrow or maybe the next day, and you know, not really care. You know, maybe live paycheck to paycheck, and you know, sometimes you have to. But there's a sense in which, you know, when your life has value and meaning, you might find that it's not so much about just living life for yourself. It's about living your life for God, that God basically lives in you, works through you. I know when we are baptized, you know, we are basically brought into a covenant relationship with God through Christ. That Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected, and his baptism is basically being put into Christ's tomb there, and rising with him, having death all around you, the water surrounding you, similar to the ancient Hebrews there going through the Red Sea, that they were following Moses. They're actually following God. Moses was leading the people through God, and you know, the ancient Hebrews, they went under the sea with death all around them. And then what happened there is the Egyptians went through the waters and they drowned and died. There's the Grant house again. You can see it there, and kind of a small house, but a nice house. And I'll tell you what, You know, if you're not baptized, you know, I hope that you would be. I know that there are people that I've known. I had a family member that was never baptized, and I didn't know it. And she passed on. And it's sad. It's sad. It's important. It's important to be baptized. Sometimes people, they live their whole life and they're never baptized. That's not right. You know. So I'll tell you what. It's important to basically have a life that we live in Christ, to be a member of the living body of Christ, to be united to Him through His death and resurrection, through baptism, to receive His own body and blood. And those are important things. That's what going to church is all about. You know, it's why Jesus came into the world, and Christmas is a holiday that we celebrate that. This is not a holiday about Santa Claus. This is a holiday about Jesus being born into the world. That's the purpose of Christmas. You know, if not for the fact that Jesus was born into the world, the story of President Grant would have a very sad end. It would be that he was president, you know, fought in the Civil War and died, and that would be it. But the fact that he was baptized prior to his passing, you can see how, you know, he's ruling and reigning in heaven in some regard. You know, I don't know, you know, what position he has in heaven, but you know, it's not for me to know. But my point here is that you know, this is some important stuff. You know, these days we see a lot of references in public school to obedience to your teachers, which is undoubtedly important to have a respect for your teachers, to be obedient to the government. Those are good things. But it should never be the case that the government is telling you what to preach. It should never be the case the government is banning Christ from all public life, or churches from being open. That should never be the case. You know, because, like I say, Jesus Christ is King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And I'll tell you what, in going through the tour here, I didn't realize that President Grant wasn't born here. Apparently he was born in Ohio. But you know, this is some nice history here, and you know, this is one of the earlier presidents. I mean, we've had plenty of presidents in the United States since Grant here, and I'll tell you what. I mean, it shows you that earlier on, I mean, you know, people they had to, so to speak, figure things out. I mean, they had to make decisions and, you know how things go, and when they didn't know, and they had to rely upon somebody, and that somebody was God. And I'll tell you what, you in your life, you need to rely upon God. You need to rely upon Christ, who's God in the flesh. Because you're going to be going through life and not know what to do next. You're not going to know like how to proceed from point A to point B. It's going to be like a mystery. And that's where there's prayer, there's intercession of the saints even. So here I am, just leaving President Grant's house, going to Galena, Illinois. We're actually in Galena, but going to the main part of Galena. And this place was about the size of Chicago, actually bigger than Chicago from what I understand, when President Grant lived here in Galena. And so here we are. We're looking at what Galena's like. We're going to be going down the old city, and we're going to be kind of taking a little bit of a tour here. We're going to see what it's like to go through the same place that the President of the United States lived at. And we're going to have some exploration time here. We'll be walking, maybe not walking, we'll see, but we're going to look at it. That's all I can say. I'll tell you what, Galena is such a nice place, and this is the business district here that I'm turning on to, so there's no turn on red here, so but we're good, and we're getting to see what Galena is like. This is a nice place, and like I say, this was the size of the city of Chicago here, and you can see how many of the buildings here are several stories. But what happened there is Galena, they had some bad times. They actually had some sort of mineral industry that went out of business, and it created some problems. It created some serious economic problems for the people here in Galena, and so a lot of these old buildings, they became abandoned for a while, or hardly used, if at all. And Chicago boomed, and Galena shrunk. And so all the old buildings that you're seeing, they're still used. People still come here, but it's more of a tourist attraction than anything else. It's not a city like Chicago was or is today, because, like I say, what happened there is if not for the tourism industry, Galena would just basically be like a ghost town. And so when it had the big economic problems that it had, people left, or they didn't really stay around, and then it became almost abandoned, I guess, and then in later years, when it became a tourist attraction, then people came back and for tourism, and then all these old buildings, they were well preserved because people didn't really use the city. It didn't become modernized, as it were. I shouldn't use the term modernized, but it didn't become updated like Chicago was. And so a lot of these old buildings here, these buildings have a lot of their historic significance still intact. And these are, like I say, these are places that President Grant would have actually gone to, and you could imagine him basically going in and out of various places around here and living all throughout here, and doing stuff, and so I'll tell you what, it's nice. It's nice. it's nice to be able to go to a place like this and see what things were like, and be able to see how Grant lived, have some ideas on how Grant lived, and after the Civil War there. And I tell you, I mean, one of the great things about history is I mean, you get to be able to experience history through stories and get an idea of what happened prior to you, and that's something that's important. It's important. I mean, the most important historical event that ever happened, besides the crucifixion of Christ and resurrection, is his birth. That's a very important thing that happened in world history. And I'll tell you what, you go to public schools and they act as if it never even happened a lot of times. When I went to SIU in Carbondale, and I went to a 7-story library, and there was no reference to Christ anywhere. I mean, except for maybe just a couple Bibles in the whole library. I mean, there was no literature from saints or anything. And that's important. It's really foundational for all of Western civilization, the birth, death, and resurrection of Christ. And we're in the West, and this is Western civilization. But a lot of times public schools, they act as if it never even happened. And so that's why this documentary is so important. I hope that in Christmas here, you have a very Merry Christmas, that you're able to celebrate the fact that Jesus Christ was born, died, and rose from the dead. And I pray that, if you don't accept that he died for you, I pray that you come to faith and believe, and be baptized, and celebrate the Eucharist, have your sins absolved. I mean, have a new life in Christ. And so I pray that you have that. So God be blessed, God be praised, and bye for now.